Good morning, everyone. Thank you for joining the Las Vegas Chamber while we discuss why diversity is important. My name is Chandler Fasciano. I am the events coordinator for the Las Vegas Chamber. Before we get started, I'd like to go over a few features of this call. If you are using a desktop or mobile Zoom applications, you may type the question anytime during the presentation using the question pane at the bottom of your screen. Likewise, we are highly encouraging you guys to ask questions live. Use the hand raise button if you have a question, and we'll open up for questions as well. Please ensure you are unmuted on your end, and please keep questions brief so we can get to as many as possible. Now, it is my pleasure to introduce Vegas Chamber President and CEO, Mary Beth Seawald.
Well, thank you so much, Chandler. Great job on your introduction there. We're very excited to have our guests with us today as we discuss this very important topic, diversity in the workforce. I want to thank our sponsors for today's events because without them, we wouldn't be able to do this. SCE Federal Credit Union, UNLV Executive MBA Program, along with Brownstein Hyatt Farber Schreck. Thank you so much to our sponsors today. I also want to thank our partner on this program, Matter Real Estate. Matter Real Estate has projects throughout the Las Vegas Valley, and they're really designed to elevate the everyday human experience, enabling people, businesses, and communities, of course, to thrive, which is what we're all looking for. One of their most exciting projects that I want to tell you about is Uncommons, which is a 500,000 square foot mixed use community opening. It's going to be opening in Southwest Las Vegas next year. So we're super excited about that. The development is going to be the first of its kind in Nevada to be built by the standards for WELL certification. It's called WELL certification, which those are the highest third-party endorsements of a building's performance and protection of employee health that is possible to get. Uncommons is also pursuing a certification by Green Globes, which is a nationally recognized green rating assessment, guidance, and certification program. So Uncommon spaces will enhance the workforce through rich amenities, open space, and connectivity as a way to start connecting the community before the project opens. Uncommons is launching Uncommon Conversations, which is what we're doing right now. And today we are proud to be hosting the inaugural Uncommon Conversations discussion online. Right now it's being done virtually, but eventually the quarterly series is going to be held in person at Uncommons in Southwest Las Vegas. So we're super excited to be here with all of our friends today. Just a couple of Vegas Chamber events I'd like to clue you in on if you're not already familiar. An upcoming webinar focusing on our partners at Hope for Prisoners. That's going to be on March 31st at 10 a.m. You don't want to miss that. That's going to be a great way to learn about Hope for Prisoners and how you as employers can access that very excellent talent pool of folks at Hope for Prisoners and the graduates there. Also coming up on April 6th is the Vegas Chamber's Legislative Day. You don't want to miss that. That's a signature chamber event that's open to President's Club and advocacy members. That's going to be a hybrid event, both in Carson, actually we're going to be in Las Vegas, but we're going to have our legislators signing in from Carson City. So you don't want to miss that. All right, and without any further ado, let's get to our moderator for today, Miss Amelie Zinzer. She's Uncommons Community Engagement Lead. Hi, Amelie.
Hey, Mary Beth, always a pleasure to work with the Chamber. So thank you today for hosting us and kicking us off with Uncommon Conversations. Really appreciate it. So thank you everyone for tuning in. We're very excited, and we also find this topic to be very, very important. So with further ado, what I'm going to be doing is, yes, shoot me, I am actually going to be reading this because these two powerhouses have done wonderful things in their career, and I'm so happy to have them join me today in this conversation. So let's go ahead and kickstart this. So Dani, we have Dani Badgett, whose passion in life's mission is to create opportunities for organizations and institutions to engage in dialogue that sheds light on inequity and injustice. Dani has been leading this work for 10 years and recently has co-founded a company called The Fire This Time, which is a group of educators focused on social justice education, creating workshops that both challenge and uplift participants. So Dani, thank you so much for joining us. And we have Gabby. Gabby is a leadership coach, strategist, and business partner. She helps businesses scale culture through effective people systems and unique employee experiences. She is sitting on the board of Latinas in Tech, a global community comprised of more than 10,000 women. Gabby is also pursuing a doctorate degree in organizational change and leadership at USC, researching the experience of women of color in STEM. So y'all see why I had to read that. They're powerhouses, and I'm so happy to have them here with me today and with all of us to have this conversation. So what I'm gonna let everyone know is whoever has tuned in, please ask questions throughout this. This is a conversation. We wanna hear from you. We wanna hear that, yes, absolutely, say that more, anything. I'm gonna be moderating those questions and asking throughout. So you don't need to wait for the end, but if you're kind of just gauging the whole conversation and wanna go ahead and, you know, give us a couple questions at the end, by all means. So let's get to these questions. Y'all ready? Okay, Dani, I'm gonna ask you the first one, okay? Why is diversity important in the workforce?
Yeah, first I just want to say thanks so much for having us, Emily. I'm excited about this conversation. So you and I kind of talked about this yesterday, but the statistics that go with diversity in the workplace, the statistics show us that a diverse workplace produces more creativity, more innovation. People are likely to work together. There's more promotion within the workplace. And so all of that is really important, but for me, more than diversity is equity and inclusion. Because if we are trying to recruit a diverse workplace, but we don't have systems in place that make things equitable or make sure that the people that we're recruiting feel like they have a voice within the company, then we're not going to continue to retain the people that we're recruiting. So while I think that diversity is so important in the workplace, I think that there's also a lot of work that we have to do internally to make sure that there are systems and structures in place to support the people that we're recruiting.
Awesome, thank you, Dani. And Gabby, go ahead, jump in.
Sure. Yeah, I guess my first point would be, does anyone not think diversity is important in the workplace nowadays? So to touch on Dani's point, yes, absolutely. I think DE&I is not important. It's mission critical. It's a non-negotiable at this point, right? It should be part of our DNA. It's who we are as a population, as a society. We serve diverse customers. And if we don't have a diverse team to be able to identify what our customers need, we're just going to lose all competitive advantage, right? So there's this idea of the diversity bonus that I'd like to share. And it basically says that you get a performance bonus when you have people that have different experiences, different tools, different ideas, right? And so this idea of a performance bonus, we know that it's going to help our organization from a bottom line standpoint. Yet to Dani's point, we still struggle with inclusion and with equity. So would love to continue talking about how we do that and how we get better in the inclusion space.
Yeah, and I like how you called out, like, who doesn't think this isn't important, right? And I'll bring up a statistic there. At the end of 2020, majority of our workforce is still majority white, 76.5% at the end of the year. So with that, let's talk about internally, like, how do we build that? How do we support that? And so Gabby, my question to you, what is your biggest piece of advice for getting started with DE&I in the workspace?
I've worked in the HR space for the last 10, 15 years, and I think it has been a struggle and it's still a constant challenge. So getting diverse talent in the door, that's the easy part. That's step one, right? We need to make sure that from day one, people feel like they made a good choice joining your organization, that they feel included and bought into the larger mission and vision of the company. And so while I think executives do have a role to play in this, right? They should absolutely support D&I initiatives like ERG groups, like partnering with external diversity groups. That's important. But I think what's even more important is the focus on managers. So managers essentially influence the day-to-day experience of your employees, of the team. So by helping them build the skills, giving them the tools to really feel like they can create an inclusive workplace, that's going to be where you're going to see the biggest return on your investment. So my advice would be help managers figure out how to create those feedback loops, that they're listening, that they're not only allies. And here's how I think about allies. So allies sort of informs that you are supporting, absolutely, but you're almost supporting from the sidelines, right? You're saying, yes, go ahead. That initiative seems great. We want people to be in it with us, right? We want leaders to be our partners and be able to execute on the initiatives, not just stand by, right? So helping our managers do that is where I think you'll see the biggest return.
Awesome. And Dani, same to you. Do you have anything to add or applaud there on that point?
Yeah, I would snap to everything that Gabby said, but I would also say that it's important internally to ask, for the organization to ask if they're really committed to change. Because I think a lot of times we embark on this work, but there's not a true commitment to change. And if we're honest with ourselves, when things get rough, or when people call us out, or when people of color in the organization say that they don't fit in, or they don't feel like they're a part of the community, then we shy away from the commitment. So I think one of the hardest and honestly the most basic questions that we have to ask ourselves is, are we committed to this work? Are we committed beyond making a statement, or beyond creating a diversity statement, or beyond just posting some social media? Are we really committed to changing systems and structures within the organization?
Yeah, and that goes with, Gabby, you're pointing out managers, and Dani, you're saying commitment, but what if people don't feel safe to really lead that and have that conversation? So that goes to the next question here is, how do we build up a safe space to hear diverse voices within the company? And even those managers that aren't trying to just be on the sideline alleys, they're trying to be in it. How do we create that safe space?
Yeah, I think it goes along with the, It goes along with the last question of making sure you're asking the hard questions, but being willing to listen. So I had an opportunity to work with an organization. They did an intercultural development inventory, which basically assesses where your organization is, interculturally speaking. And once we got the results, we came up with a game plan of how they could move forward, but they didn't like the results. They didn't believe the results. And they were like, this is not where we think we are as an organization. We think we're further along than this. So I think it's really important for when you're asking those hard questions to be honest with yourself, accept that you're probably not as far along as you think you are. And not only are you not as far along, but you're going to probably need someone to come in and help you get to where you're wanting to go. And that includes managers and leadership. I think a lot of times we have this thought process that if I'm in leadership, I know it all. Of course I want a diverse workforce. Of course I'm going to try and hire diversity, but we're not asking ourselves hard questions, and we're not willing to be honest with ourselves and say we're not where we need to be and we have a lot of work to do.
Yeah, that's a good call out. Dani, you and I've had this conversation for a long time as we work together, and that's a good call out. Like, you could do X, Y, Z, but it's still not getting us to that place. And we need to be really going into the more of the harder conversations and harder initiatives, definitely. And Gabby, what about you? Any tips on that, on what to do to build a safe space?
Agree with Dani on the listening point. That is such an easy first step to take. And whether that is through listening circles, right? Getting your teams together and just asking the questions and truly listening. Inclusion surveys. So similar to Dani's point, getting a baseline for where you are now is going to help you measure progress and measure success in the space that can be tricky to measure, right? It's not always get X amount of people in the door. It's a lot more than that. So I think there are different tactics you can use to listen. But I also think it can be subtle, right? So in the way that you respond to people coming forward, sharing ideas. So the way you respond is everything, is going to set the precedent and the tone for how safe people feel going forward. So being able to recognize and being able to be aware and just listen to what folks think is so important. And, one example of this is to Dani's point, saying that organizations sometimes, or leaders, think they know what the best thing for their organization is, right? Well, we need more diversity, we're going to do this. But it's important to realize that not all people of color, for example, experience work in the same way. Not all women experience work in the same way. So there's not going to be a turnkey solution that's going to land well with everyone. Truly listening and figuring out what they need, that's going to be where you spend your time.
Great. We actually have a question from folks watching from their home or office. How can my company authentically engage employees to be part of our new initiative to diversify our hiring committees without tokenizing employees with diverse perspectives? I'll go ahead and shoot this over to you, Gabby, and then Dani, I'd love for you to chime in as well on that.
Yeah, I guess I'd want to know more about the initiatives, but I think coming from a leadership perspective and really tying it back to the why are we doing this work? What is our commitment to it? And asking folks for help. I don't think you need to target certain groups, right? You want everyone to be included in the process, but tying it back to the why and really helping folks understand the ask versus, hey, we need your specific perspective on this issue. I can see how people might feel tokenized. So taking it back to the why and the vision, I think is the most important.
I would agree with, I think a lot of times leadership rolls out initiatives and get back once the initiative is rolled out. We need back employees on day one. The initiative has even started. So voices are included in whatever initiative that we're even trying to create on the forefront, so that individuals don't feel tokenized. If you're asking my opinion right away, I'm not going to feel tokenized when we get to the initiative and be a part of the conversation.
Yeah, that makes being part of the conversation is really big here, and supporting. So in a perfect world, like we're not going to get this right. Let's say we have all the initiatives that are having everyone included. We're having, leadership really, leading that, all the initiatives, everything is feeling okay, but we're still always going to be learning. They're not going to be experts once we have everything set in place. So how do we continue the education, ongoing education? I'm going to call it out. Like 2020 was a year everyone's like, we're going to do this, we're going to do that, we're going to do this, I'm committing. But they didn't continue the education. What about 2021? What is that looking like now? So question is, how do we continue the education in the workplace? And Dani, since this is definitely something you do with your work, like tell us how, please.
Yeah, no, 2020 was the year that we started the fire this time, because so many people were asking, how do we continue to move forward? And what we saw a lot of was performative allyship. A lot of people were performing. There were a lot of statements. I can not tell you how many emails I got from companies that were like, this is our statement, Same Lives Matter. This is our statement against police brutality, which is great. But then you how your employees of color actually feel in your workplace. And there were no strategies that were created. It's cute and it's nice to have this statement, but if there's no strategy to get you to the statement that you're making, it's pointless. And a lot of times in organizations, we focus and we focus on organizational performance and all of these metrics, but we should have a strategy and metrics determine whether we're going in concerning D&I. So for me, I would say you need to reach out to other people. You need to reach out to your organization, ask for help. And it goes back to that commitment of saying, like, I don't know all the answers. This is really messy work. Anytime you're dealing with identity, it's going to be really messy, especially in the world that we live in. So making sure that you have experts that are willing to come in and hold your hand through the process. Make sure people who are willing to kind of with you and say, this is what that thing, this is what we're seeing in your organization. This is what your employees are sharing with us. This is where you are. And to get to where you want to be, these are the strategies that you have to put in place. And that could take 3 years, that could take 5 years, but it goes back to that commitment. Is this something that we want to perform in 2020 or 2021, or is this actually something that we want to carry out?
Yeah, definitely. Gabby, what about you? You have any tips?
Making it part of the business strategy, just like Dani said, it's so important, right? You can come up with a D&I plan, but if that's not part of your broader business or organizational strategy, it's not going to weigh very heavily, right? So there's so many things that you can weave. Everything we do has an element of DE&I to it, from how you hire, how you promote, how you learn in the organization. So as you develop a learning organization where folks are constantly learning about how to do their jobs better, right? How to have a bigger impact in the business. That also means how they manage diverse teams, how they work with others and become allies. So I think making it a part of your learning strategy and overall business strategy is important. Some of the tactical things that I've seen done really well is, one, making ERGs or employee resource groups or D&I task forces. I think those are great because they are voluntary. These are folks who are truly passionate and interested in helping to change things in the organization, and often do a good job of listening to others in the organization and their ideas on how to enact change. So I'm a big advocate of those, as long as there's leadership support, right? Because you can do lots of talking and listening without true commitment from the team to make change.
And let's talk about that leadership. Oh, go ahead, Dani. Go ahead.
No,
Go ahead.
I was just going to point out, there was a comment that said when there's no strategy and dollars behind those statements, it's fruitless. And I think that's so true. When you have, I know especially last year, there were a lot of diversity officer positions or chief diversity officer positions that were coming available in companies and organizations. But one of the main questions that I ask is, how much money is behind that position? How much power does that position actually hold? So it's great to even create a position and have a person of color in that position, but if they don't have power, if they don't have dollars behind that title to actually enact change, then it is fruitless.
And that's where we go into, like, is it a safe space? Do they have a voice? Can they speak up? Are they sitting at the table of decisions and being able to speak and not be, put to the side of their idea because no, like that's not, revenue generating or whatever it may be, right? And this question, and I know when I was prepping Gabby on this, we kind of already started going at this with this question, but it's a question like, we have all that set. We have a safe space, we have everything, but we still have leadership that's not meeting us. And so how do you counteract comments from leadership such as, we just hire or promote the best person of the job, regardless of race or gender? I'm gonna start with Gabby on this.
It's so tough. It's not an easy conversation to have. And, being in the HR space, I feel like I've had lots of them. And so I guess my initial reaction to that, so when someone says, we want to hire the right person, can you all hear me?
I can hear you.
They can't hear. Okay.
I can hear you.
Got it. Let's be real. What they're really saying is, I want to hire more people like me, right? And so that's where I would question. I would ask the question, one, what does the best person mean? What does that look like? What is our definition of the best person? And according to what standard, right? And so the way I think about how we should hire or who we should hire is, what do we need as an organization to be successful? So if we serve a diverse customer base, we likely need, again, tying it back to why it's important, we likely need a diverse workforce who's going to be able to know and relate to those customers and know exactly what they need. So the question is the person that we're looking at to hire, are they the best person? Maybe. Can they add value to our organization? Would be the better question that I would ask. Are they a culture add versus a culture fit that I hear all of the time? And so that's where I would push. I would push to figure out what the definition of the best person is, right? How do we define that? And what do we actually need in our organization that will add value to help us achieve our business goals? But it's a tough one. It's a tough conversation to have.
It's a very tough conversation. I will say in my career, I've had many of those type of comments of having to push that. And that's just a shame, truly. Dani, anything to add to that?
No, I would agree. And all of that I had written down was underlying bias, because that's what it goes back to. When you say that this is the best person, but you send me a picture of your leadership and it's all white men, then that tells me there's an underlying bias that you believe that the best person is a white man. And so you have to challenge that. I've worked in many organizations that have hired diverse workforce at the bottom, but don't have a strategy for promoting individuals. And there's a reason behind that. It's systemic racism, and we have to call that out, and we have to put things in place to dismantle that.
Also, what you find is whenever you say systemic racism or institutional racism, and you want to challenge your leadership on that, they kind of get in a tizzy and like, oh no, not that word. It's like, no, but that is what it is. Yeah. So, challenging your leadership on that and calling it and being respectful and like challenging it is really big, really, really big. Okay, so that's internal. That's the internal questions I have. And thank you guys for submitting that question and, hyping everyone up here. Please keep submitting. We have one more question or two more questions from me to the panelists here, and would love to start getting those questions in from those that are watching from home. So we've worked on the internal. We've given everyone some good, some good knowledge and some good things to bring back to their company to speak on behalf of. Now let's talk about what are some creative ways to proactively source candidates from underrepresented communities. Gabby.
Yeah, I can dive in. So I think before investing in job boards or diverse job boards, which by the way, there are some that are amazing and you should absolutely look at. I think organizations can do a better job of leaning in and leaning on their current teams and current networks to really find the best talent, right? And diverse talent. So you'd be surprised if you add all of your employees and all of their network connections on LinkedIn. I mean, you'd have hundreds and thousands of people to pull from a talent perspective. So I'd say make it a point to really help folks understand that they should also wear their recruiter hat on top of the other hat that they wear, right, at the company. Everyone is a recruiter. So making sure that folks have visibility into what jobs you are hiring for, what types of skills and qualities you're looking for, and really helping them push that out to their network. That's the easiest way to really get a broader and diverse talent pool.
Yeah, that's a good call out. Dani, what about you? Like, what have you seen companies do well and companies that just kind of bomb it on that end on trying to bring in underrepresented communities into their workforce?
I think what I've seen companies do well is building relationships in the community. So one of the things when I came to Phoenix, what blew my mind, I immediately was drawn to the Black Chamber of Commerce because I was new to Phoenix. I knew that these were my people. They were going to help get me acclimated in the community. When I was working for a corporation, I mentioned this to my supervisor. I was like, we need to build a relationship with the Black and Hispanic Chamber of Commerce. And he is a white man, so I didn't even know that existed. And we're recruiting people as we're opening a new market in Phoenix. And so that was very eye-opening for me, but I think that's what we need. We need people to say, we have to build relationships with other Chamber of Commerce. We have to build relationships in the community. We have to hire people of color so that the people in the community see that they're represented. I will likely not want to work in a place where I don't see myself represented. So we have to have representation. And I looked this up in Las Vegas. So I was like, is there a Black Chamber of Commerce or Hispanic Chamber of Commerce? There's the Urban Chamber of Commerce. So that would be a great relationship to build and figure out, is there a workforce within that community that you can pull from or relationships that you can build there. So I think it's just a matter of thinking outside the box and being willing to create relationships.
Oh, thank you. Thank you.
Couple
So
of points to add on that, Amelie, if I could. So I would just go back to the network example I gave earlier. So you can also tap your employees' internal networks for these professional organizations that they are already a part of, just like Dani was mentioning. So for me, I'm part of a group called Latinas in Tech, who the sole purpose is to help Latinas grow their careers in technology, right? And so if I'm an employee of an organization they reach out to me and say, hey, we're hiring for this person, I can automatically go to my network outside of work to help promote those job postings. So I'd say just another note on the network piece. And then Amelie, you said, what is something that I've seen companies do not so well?
Yes.
So I was thinking about job descriptions. And I know that's been a hot topic recently, but job descriptions are historically just not written well, one, and two, can often contain just some gendered language and just can be riddled with bias. And so use the resources. There are lots of great tools that can essentially go into your job descriptions, review them, and point out some of that gendered language. So I know one that we've used prior is called Textio, and it's really great because they can just point out the areas that you can improve on. So that's just one tactical thing that we can take away.
No, that's great. Thank you for that. I had no idea that was a thing. Like that's a resource to utilize. That's our job, job descriptions could be more universal as a whole. Yep. Someone asked, what are some great job boards Gabby would suggest? So we'll definitely have you type that up, Gabby, or we'll send it out to everybody afterwards as well. My last question for you guys before we go into questions of everyone tuning in. We've had this conversation. We've said some amazing things here of what companies can do and what companies aren't doing. So out of our conversation, what do you want to hit home to everyone tuning in to take back to the workplace? What can they use right now that they could go back to and start that conversation? Gabby.
I was just typing in the chat.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, gosh, so many things. I mean, I would say one, just that idea of culture fit versus culture add, right? Like you'll hear people say that a lot, especially hiring managers. So we want someone who fits with our culture. Well, if that's the case, you're just going to continue hiring the same type of people. And we're not a fraternity or sorority. Like we are an organization that serves a diverse set of customers. And so I would just say, like, as much as you can sort of make that correction of, okay, let's talk about culture add. What can this person add to our culture and make us that, make us stronger from an organizational standpoint? So that, yeah, that comes to mind.
Which I will like to call out. Gabby and I worked together in our past life, and we talked about culture add and culture fit, and she really changed that narrative. So you did that within that company. So I applaud you on that for sure. Dani.
Yeah, I think the takeaway I would continue to push on is asking the hard questions. Are you really committed to change? Or is it just that you like the idea of having a diverse workforce? Are you really committed to doing a change to make sure that your systems and structures are equitable and inclusive? Are you willing to listen, as Gabby talked about, but also respond in the correct way and take feedback from everyone who's involved? And then finally, are you willing to create strategies? Like, it's fine to come on here for an hour and hear what we have to say, but you have to be willing to go back and actually put this into action. Create an action plan, start listening to people, create strategies for where you're going to be next year. Hopefully next year you won't be listening to this panel and be at the same place. You have to actually take what we're saying and put it into action.
Thank you. And if you guys have any questions, please ping it in the chat. Of course, Steve is the first to send that. So hello, Dani and Gabby. Quick scenario. You walk into a new team member orientation and you see a younger version of yourself. Knowing what you know now, what do you tell your younger self as they begin their professional journey? I will start with you, Dani.
Hi, Steve. That's a great question. I would tell my younger self to be authentic and be okay with using my voice. I think my 21, 22-year-old self, my first position, I was the only Black woman in a space of like 60 white people. And I didn't necessarily feel intimidated until I was told that I was the diversity hire. And so for me, I would go back and tell my younger self that you're enough, you're more than enough, and you deserve to be in this space. And you have to use your voice to change things. I think I knew that to an extent, but I needed someone to come and tell me it's okay to buck the system. It's okay to tell leadership that they're wrong. It's okay to point out I'm the only Black person in this room. It's okay to point out that hiring practices are inequitable. I don't know that I felt safe enough to do that, but that's what I was.
I love that. Gabby.
Great question, Steve. I similar to Dani. Yeah, I mean, use your voice. And I think I worried so much about being liked and being accepted that I wanted to conform to the culture or to others that were different than I was. And so truly embracing my background. Yes, I have a long name. And guess what? Like, that's my name. And so not being worried about like, making it easier for other people to accept me, like just moving forward and accepting who I am and doing my work in that sense. The other thing I would tell myself is to find a mentor earlier, because I felt like I could do it all and just kind of work my way to the top. And it was an ego thing. But I would say find a mentor early. And just because I didn't see myself in leadership, right? So maybe there weren't other Latinas that were in a leadership position, I sort of said, oh, well, I can do it myself. I don't think you always need to have someone who looks like you as your mentor, right? Find someone who has the skills that you don't have, or find someone who is inside of work or outside of work that can give you a different perspective. And so that's what I think one of our colleagues, actually, that Amelie and I used to work with, he always used to say, create your own personal board of advisors. And I really like that idea. Like in your life, not just in work, but in your life, who do you turn to get those different perspectives? Do you have that core group that you can lean on? I wish I would have done that sooner.
That's great advice. And I remember that person saying that, and I feel like that this is why I turn to you both. Like I look at you ladies as my mentor, and like, I'm always, always down to elevate women and be around women and just, have my personal advisory board here. So any other questions for the crew before we wrap up here? I will do a little dance, do a little shimmy. All right, we got a question, two-part question. One, is it still considered an industry standard to think of diversity as being reflective of the greater population? For example, Las Vegas is very ethnically diverse, so it makes sense that our company should also be ethnically diverse. However, if a company is located in South Dakota, I can't say that, Falls, I don't know what it's, South Falls, South Dakota, that may not be feasible. So that's the one part question. And then the second is, in what ways can companies begin to expand diversity beyond ethnic diversity? I know you guys could read this too, so we'd love for anyone to jump in on this one.
Can you read it one more time? I'm not seeing the question.
Oh, you're not seeing it. I'm so sorry, Dani. Is it still considered an industry standard to think of diversity as being reflective of the greater population? And then two, in what ways can companies begin to expand diversity beyond ethnic diversity?
Yeah, in terms of the first question, I would say, I think it's a matter of the customers that you serve. The customers that the business serve, at least in my perspective, are most likely going to be diverse, right? So less so the community or the city that you're located in, but more so the customers you serve. So that's where I would go back to that performance bonus, is like, no matter where you are, the more diversity you have, you're going to see a performance bonus at the end of the day. So that would be my response to the first one.
And the second one, in what ways can companies begin to expand diversity beyond ethnic diversity?
Yeah, I mean, there's diversity of thought, there's diversity of background. It doesn't have to end with someone's race or ethnic identity. There's just so diversity that each individual can bring to an organization. And so I think understanding the value, as Gabby talked about, that a person can bring, that in itself is diversity. And that may not be, the value that they're bringing may not be their ethnicity. It may be where they are coming from, their background, their experience. So I think making sure that you're willing to think outside the box and not just saying, well, I'm checking off the box and I have a Black person, I have a Hispanic person, I have all of these people, so now I have a diverse workforce, but making sure that you're understanding it's diversity of background and thought and ideas as well.
Yeah. I just saw a question about diversity bonus. So I would recommend checking out the book. I think it's by the author called Page is the last name, but it's called The Diversity Bonus. And so essentially it outlines from a diversity perspective that could mean just what Dani described. So different background, different experience level, different tools, perspectives. So we know that those different experiences is going to lead to higher performance. And generally the way that you get those different experiences, tools, perspectives, most of the time is going to be from people from different backgrounds and different ethnicities. And so they share a really good example in the book. I can't remember the specifics, but in general, it's about Netflix and how Netflix organized this prize or this competition. And the idea was whoever could help them figure out how to improve their algorithm for the matching, so the recommended films that they have in their platform, whoever could do that the best would receive like $1 million or something. And so the story goes that different people, so experts in the field and engineers and scientists, tried to attack this problem. And what ended up happening is that no one team could actually solve and improve the algorithm. It wasn't until the teams joined forces and collaborated with each other that someone had a light bulb moment that no one else saw. And so it was about until the teams joined forces and really brought all of their diversity, all of their experience and tools, they were able to solve this like crazy problem and got the prize. So I would recommend checking it out. It's super interesting.
Love it. Thank you guys. And then we'll have this other question here. How can women champion our colleagues that are from diverse backgrounds other than offering support and championing them? Is there anything specific we can be doing? Whoever wants to jump in on that one.
Yeah. Lots of things come to mind. It's so hard. Yeah, I would say, so from different backgrounds, offering them support and championing them. I mean, it depends on what you're after, but an easy example is like, how do we hire more women or promote more women into leadership positions? So just like being able to be the advocate. And if you hold a position of power in the company, I mean, share that, right? So if there's a job opening, if there's a posting, if you can make a LinkedIn recommendation for someone, I think those are all steps that you can take to help the person get to the next step. Use the power that you do have, even if it's small, even if it's writing a LinkedIn recommendation, that goes a really long way to help someone in their career.
Yeah, it's great. Dani.
Yeah, I always say be willing to share the mic. So when you get to a leadership position as a woman or as anyone, honestly, be willing to share the mic with someone who's different than you. So just because you're in that leadership position doesn't mean that you have to speak all the time or you have all the answers. But there are people that report to you, other people in the organization that probably have better things to say and may not have a platform. So be willing to share your platform with other people.
I love
That's
that.
a good point, Dani. And I just wanted to comment on this phenomenon called the queen bee syndrome that you all may have heard of, right? Is like when a woman gets into this position of power, sometimes they feel threatened and sometimes don't want to lift up other women. And so I would say avoid that as much as possible. To Dani's point, share the mic, bring other people up with you, because that's how you're truly going to see success.
Women uplifting women is one of the most beautiful things ever. And it helps all companies. Yes, Steve, Queen Bee, Beehive. I will let Beyonce have that name as she deserves it. But, with that, we're going to go ahead and start wrapping up here. I can't thank you both enough for joining on the first Uncommons Conversations. Again, to highlight here, this will be a quarterly thing. And then once we're able to come together in person, this will be a thing that we launch in person monthly at Uncommons on our, in our streets there at Uncommons. So we're very excited to bring the community together. And I can't wait to invite Dani and Gabby again and also do this in person. That would be so fun. And this conversation doesn't stop here. Uncommons is making sure that though you guys joined, we're making sure that we're holding everybody accountable. I will be sending out an email for everyone that has joined in to see what have you done in this past month from what you learned from Dani and Gabby. And it doesn't stop just at just that 1 month. We're going to keep having this conversation outside of just this panel. So I'm really excited. I will also be sending out the information of Dani and Gabby. So if you guys want to ping them on LinkedIn, see what they're up to, get some of their thoughts, I'm more than sure that they'll be happy to jump on. And again, thank you, Chambers, for hosting the first conversation.
Well, and thank you, Amelie, and thank you, Dani and Gabby. This has been an absolutely exhilarating conversation. It was so much fun to hear all your perspectives, and we look forward to the next time that we're able to get together and support each other, women supporting women. Just want to thank everybody for being with us today. Thanks for your membership at the Vegas Chamber, and don't hesitate to reach out to us anytime we can be of service. Thank you, guys.
Yeah. Thank you all. Have a beautiful day.